Tennis. G'day and welcome to this Australian Open Live, produced by Wise Words Media, coming to you live from our production studios in Melbourne, home of the Australian Open at Melbourne Park. And we're doing a couple of previews today just to get you in the mood. It is Monday the 28th of August here in Melbourne, Australia, but over in New York they're just in the middle of their recovery sessions and getting their nutrition, diet, their schedule worked out, that in about 12 hours, maybe even less, they'll be taking on those players lining up for the first round matches, the women and the men. And tomorrow we'll be bringing you live coverage, radio style, audio only, of the men's ATP Tour singles side of the draw. But we've also got a treat for you today. We're doing a really granular look into the career of Jordan Thompson, the Australian player who has just cracked his 100th win as a tour professional in men's tennis. But before we talk about Jordan, we got to do a bit of this. G'day, welcome back to this Australian Open Live, produced by Wise Words Media. We are live in Melbourne, Australia, and we are licking our lips at the prospect of the US Open commencing on Monday the 28th of August 2023, which is what it currently is here in Melbourne. It's just a little bit past 11 o'clock in the morning, but in New York it is currently, we'll bring you what it is currently at Flushing Meadows. It is currently 27 degrees and sunny. That's not what I was looking for, so let's just go into the right. Our go-to source for everything in New York, the current local time, it is just ticking past 9 o'clock in the evening there, and it's 27 degrees. It was sunny in New York today, and for the first day of the US Open, it's going to be a little bit stormy, a little bit rainy, a little bit grumpy. Sounds like New York all over. And the same thing for Wednesday at this stage. It'll be a high of 29 on the first day of the US Open, and a high of 21 degrees, a high of 24 degrees. The Yanks always put everything backwards, and 26 degrees on the second day. But let's get straight into the Spotlight series. Today we are shining a spotlight, and it's our player watch, Jordan Thompson. We spotted a great profile piece today published in the public domain, and we thought, why not share it? Because not everyone's got access to everything that's at our fingertips. You don't need to waste time looking through all the different apps and websites and iPhones and iPads and I don't know what you use to catch up with your tennis news. But why not let us do all the hard work for you? And we're very pleased to be able to take a bit of a deep breath today. And let's just take a look at the profile. Jordan Thompson established in the top 100 now, and he's been kicking around the traps for quite some time, and he's a little bit out of the Leighton Hewitt mould, where he fights desperately for every point. So let's get into it and take a look at the career of Jordan Thompson, as profiled by Melbourne's Age, the Age newspaper here in Melbourne. So every time you hear that stinger, we're going into a recalibrating, just changing it up a gear, switching direction slightly. So while we go through the Spotlight series, which has been running now for a good nearly 3 years, and the Player Watch aspect of our Spotlight series, let's run a bit of our past episodes from our archive of previous episodes here in the background, and let's just get this going so you can enjoy some of the previous content that we've been bringing the audience over the journey with our first ever episode. It's a couple of years old now, but it will give you a sample. Oh dear, that branding's a bit old. But this will give you a bit of a sample of how we like to present information and how it's evolved over the journey. So we'll just keep that playing silently in the background because there's some commentary over that footage, and so you'll just have to put up with my voice for the time being. But let's now get into the career of Jordan Thompson from Australia, who, let's face it, he's not the first player that comes to mind when you think of top 100 players, but he's carved out a great niche during his career. So let's get started with the career of Jordan Thompson from Australia. And there he is on screen, but before that, we need this. And we'll get back to the Spotlight series there. And Jordan Thompson, as I said, been kicking around the traps here in Australia for quite some time. And I can see that I interrupted this. This thing shuts down. Shuts down as soon as I change screens. So we'll get back to that Player Watch and rev that up. So really appreciate you joining us here today on this Australian Open Live. We are licking our lips. We cannot wait. Like any tennis fan around the world, we're sure that our global audience is also champing at the bit to see the action start in Flushing Meadows, New York. And one of those that will be participating in the first round at the US Men's Open is Jordan Thompson, Australia's Jordan Thompson. Here's the key points that we've listed below. You can see them for yourself in the description for this episode. Australian Jordan Thompson has broken back into the world's top 50 ahead of the US Open, which starts tomorrow, Melbourne time, Melbourne, Australia. And Jordan Thompson is one of 8 Aussies in the top 100. That is Australian men, mind you. Australian men, 8 Australian men, which is a great for Australian tennis. 8 Aussies in the top 100 playing at Flushing Meadow. Half of them inside the top 50. Now, I didn't know that. Now, Rinky Hijikata, who won the Australian men's doubles title this year with Jason Kubler, he is ranked in the singles at 111, and he's come through qualifying, and he's also made the main singles draw. So that is fantastic news for him as he's starting to evolve and mature into his tennis career. And after years of tough slog on the men's tour, Australia's Jordan Thompson recently clocked his 100th singles win. And this year, he's had great performances, encouraging performances against the likes of Novak, Djokovic and Carlos Alcaraz. So let's just take a look, a deeper look at Jordan Thompson in this profile piece that we spotted published in the public domain there. in the Australian print publication, the Melbourne Age. And so let's just have a look at that. We're just switching gears a bit. So according to this article, Jordan Thompson has commented on his achievement of 100 wins on the men's ATP tour, saying in his eyes, tennis, professional tennis is the most messed up sport ever. And that's just typical laconic Australian humour. Very dry, very funny. But everything is relative on the mean streets of the professional tour. Well, for Jordan Thompson anyway, he's one of 4 Australian men inside the top 50 in last week's ATP rankings. And because they come out every week, they're refreshed every week, the rankings for the men's and women's tours. And he recently celebrated his 100th career tour-level victory in August 2023 in Washington. He beat the Frenchman Adrian Manarino, who is described as wily. Now, in comparison, Novak Djokovic last week claimed win number 1069. He beat Carlos Alcaraz to achieve that milestone. It took him 4 hours to claim the Cincinnati Masters 1000 title, but but look, let's be fair. If we're comparing Jordan Thompson and Novak Djokovic, not even the great Roger Federer has a resume that measures up with Djokovic. But according to Jordan Thompson, he reckons that that perhaps only 30 of the guys in the top 100 right now in the world have won over 100 matches. So he's got a really good perspective there on his milestone, which he acknowledges is pretty good. Last week, this interview took place, and he even reckons that it's easy to take such a milestone for granted. Well, I'll tell you what, if I could just win 100 points over my career, and I'm talking up till any age, not just playing age, but Jordan Thompson saying it's pretty easy to take it for granted. And he thinks that one of his greatest strengths as a tour professional, he's pretty good at being in the moment and being aware of what's going on in his tennis career, and 100 wins as a professional, pretty special according to him. But no doubt you'd have to agree that at the age of 29, Jordan Thompson is a success story, and I might agree with this, possibly underappreciated in the Australian sporting landscape, which let's face it, is pretty crowded at the moment. Last week it was all about the Matildas, who went out in the semi-final of the Women's World Cup. Yesterday, Ange Postecoglou achieved an unbeaten 3-game opening run as the new manager of Tottenham Hotspur in the EPL. They're sitting 3rd at the moment. So, yeah, Jordan Thompson, by comparison, probably not achieving a lot of cut-through. But I can tell you from personal experience, I've been following this guy since he first came on the scene as a young professional and started to make his mark, was starting to get wildcard entries in tournaments, in Grand Slams, and was starting to be selected on the cusp of the Australian Men's Davis Cup team, and has been performing well ever since. And he is a scrapper and a fighter, and he is no slouch with a racket. But he was a top 20 junior more than a decade ago, and like most professional sports people, when they're starting out and trying to make that transition, especially in tennis, from being a top junior, all-conquering, or even high-performing, he doubted his ability to make it on the ultra-competitive men's tour, because as he was coming through at the age of 19, he was barely 170 centimetres tall and quite skinny. And I apologise, I've just seen that I failed to make this screen to get it up there. There it is, and apologies for that. But getting back to Jordan Thompson, well, in the preceding 10 years, over that period since he's turned professional, he's grown from 170 centimetres to 183 centimetres tall, and he's not super skinny anymore. He's a very robust 82 kilos, thank you very much. And the one thing that his weight has grown, but his doubts have started to evaporate, and with good reason, because Jordan Thompson broke into the men's top 100 in early 2016. I did not know that. I did not realise that. And he spent most of the last 7 years with a double-digit ranking, scaling as high as number 43 in the world. That occurred in mid-2019. He's a very consistent performer. He might not often be in the second week of tournaments, but it's not unusual for him to make it as far as quarterfinals or semi-finals. But number 43 in the world, that ranking, that is, according to this interview, it is the standard you want to reach in tennis. And if you can keep yourself below number 43 in the world, you are almost guaranteed entry into the 4 Grand Slams. So remember, what that means is that every Grand Slam, the seedings go up to 30 or 32, and if you're outside that top 30 in the world, you're more than likely to run across the toughest opponents in your first game or your second game in the first or second rounds. Now, to get to around that ranking of 43 in the world, Jordan Thompson first had to negotiate. I wouldn't describe it as the barbarity of the lower tiers of tennis, but I would agree that it is very, very hard yards, and that's why at this Australian Open Life, we like to focus on the wild cards. We like to focus on the people who have to go through qualifying, because Jordan Thompson has been on that journey, which includes dodgy accommodation, no spectators, and sometimes just token prize money, and you've got to add to that list token rankings points. And he even dropped an anecdote about one tournament that he played in Romania. Jordan Thompson stayed in some accommodation that didn't have a shower head. Can you imagine? Trying to make a living as a professional sportsman, and you can't even have a decent shower as part of your recovery. So that's we're just partway through this profile of Jordan Thompson. Let's just take a quick break, so don't go away. We'll be right back. G'day, welcome back. We tell stories, and our story is tennis. It is this Australian Open Life. We are deep into the second segment of the Spotlight Series and Player Watch, and the player that we are watching this morning ahead of the start of the US Open in Flushing Meadow, New York, is Australia's Jordan Thompson. He is 29 years of age and currently ranked at 51 in the world. And for those of you that are interested, I'll be chucking some links there in the chat for you that you can see for yourself. You can see for yourself. Sorry, I'm just giggling because I'm trying to put in another link, but you can see for yourself if you're interested that just do this. I should just go and do this, players by name. I'm going to get Jordan Thompson's US Open profile here for you if you're interested. I've already put his ATP Tour profile there for you, and you can see this right now. It is coming into the chat. So for those of you that are interested in this, learning a little bit more about the players that often aren't front and centre in the media, this is what we like to do, educate the audience, bring them some information. If you have any players that you'd like to know a bit more about, or maybe there's maybe you're more interested in how the players from your country as a whole are performing, and as a whole, I can tell you that the Yanks will be getting excited about the US Open, because there's a lot of US men starting to perform and starting to get some attention, like Taylor Fritz. He's a young dad. He is starting to emulate the performances of the young US women players that have been so impressive over the last couple of years. And obviously you got Coco Gauff and Eleni Bektis, those sort of people. So let's just switch gears a bit and do this. And we'll get right back into continue this profile and look into the career of Jordan Thompson. And in the background, we'll just have some of our previous Spotlight series and Player Watch episodes playing in the background there for you, to just give you an example of the type of content we like to bring you going into the Australian Open 2024. So as we left the profile that we were running out through there, the last thing that we saw was Jordan Thompson. Like most players making their way in professional tennis, you got to go pay your dues. And one of his stops was in Romania, where he stayed in some accommodation without a shower head. But now that he's a bit more established, he's staying hopefully where there's more than one shower head and a couple of bathrooms, hopefully, there in New York. But as we continue looking at this profile of this player that we spotted in the public domain, published yesterday, being an Australian player also means spending roughly 10 months of the year overseas. And as soon as he could afford it, Jordan Thompson snagged himself a base, purchased a home in Florida, which is very common for a lot of overseas players. A lot of Eastern European players like basing themselves in Florida as well. But it was as soon as he could afford the privilege, that's what he did, because according to Jordan, being away from his home in Australia for so long, as he eloquently puts it, it sucks. No doubt. But he says that when you first leave, that's probably the hardest thing, and then you adapt to it. And there's been many Australian players had to undergo that journey of not just becoming a fixture on the tour, but also getting used to travelling the world by yourself without your friends and family. But as Jason Kubler and Rinky Hijikata informed us after their Grand Slam win and their run-up, they're leading up to the final, the better you can do and the more prize money you accumulate, that gives you the luxury of bringing along family and friends to support you while you're overseas. That's a common practice. Leighton Hewitt was a big one on that, with his mum and dad and his sister often watching him play while he was competing there. But for Jordan Thompson, he leaves Australia pretty much from the conclusion of the Australian Open every year, often not returning until the end of October every year. And it's his observation that he doesn't think that people, and when he says people, I suppose that's people like ourselves outside the professional tennis circuit and the tennis community. People don't get what you have to do. Well, I like to think that at this Australian Open life that we do get it, because these people are often not in the spotlight, and as that's exactly what he comments on next, that people think the life of a tennis professional is glamorous, but it's certainly not, especially when you get flight delays, lose your bags, and you're staying in, as he says in the Australian colloquialism, and I'll translate it for those of you with delicate ears, when you're staying in something that's not up to scratch. But like as much anything else, Jordan Thompson needed to come to terms with the realities of tour life, and that can be translated as be prepared to lose more than you win, even as one of the best 50-odd players on the planet, and that is no mean feat, that achievement. Now, growing up in Sydney, Jordan Thompson, Sydney local, his ATP Tour record, which excludes results on the lesser Challenger and Futures circuits, which we often come across results for the players we like to profile, and there's a separate website. There's the ATP Tour website and the WTA Tour website, which you'll find the better known, better performing players on, but there's also the ITF Tour website for the juniors that are coming through the ranks and trying to establish themselves, and also those that are finding it hard to make that jump from top 500 or 350 down to the on the cusp of the top 100. But entering the boisterous New York Grand Slam, Jordan Thompson has a record of 102 wins across his career and 129 defeats. Now, in 2023, he's almost even at 16 wins, 17 losses as his record this season. And Jordan Thompson commenting that it's a brutal profession that he has chosen. He says that he read a stat recently where only the top 30 or top 40 men's players in the world have winning percentages in terms of points-wise during this year. So he says even when you're winning matches, you're losing more points within those matches you're competing. And he sums it up by saying tennis is the most messed up sport ever, which is a great laconic, typically Australian way to view things, which is not feeling sorry for yourself. That's just a way of applying your own perspective to your profession. So we will finish up this segment of the Spotlight series on our player watch of Jordan Thompson. This fantastic insight into his career, having achieved 100 wins on the men's professional tour recently during this year, and we will continue that profile, so don't go away. We'll be right back. We tell stories, and our story is tennis. G'day, welcome back to this Australian Open Live, coming to you live from Melbourne, Australia, home of the Australian Open. I nearly said Australian Grand Prix, but we actually are the home of the Australian Grand Prix, but that's not what we're focusing on today. No, it is the Spotlight series, and we are bringing you our segment, a special player profile on Australia's Jordan Thompson. It is the Player Watch, and we're celebrating Jordan Thompson recently achieving 100 wins as a professional on the ATP Men's Tour in professional tennis. That is a fantastic achievement, and well done, Jordan. Absolutely thrilled to see that stat. And so once we saw that published in the public domain yesterday in The Age here in Melbourne, Australia, well, we just had to bring that to you, because that's what we specialise in at this Australian Open Life. We want to bring you sort of a different type of content about tennis players, something that's more unique, more innovative than that you might see on the mainstream coverage for the Australian Open or even any Grand Slam. And this year we've branched out to cover Grand Slams all across the world, bringing you this live coverage of all qualifying days for the Grand Slams. And we managed to achieve that with the US Open and Wimbledon, and the first 2 days of the Grand Slam tournaments. Why? Because that's where the best stories are across the Grand Slams. When you've got we're going to be bringing you the match results and the match play and the scores and the tiers and the tantrums, the injury timeouts, full coverage of a full set of live matches. So join the conversation while we bring you radio-style, audio-only commentary during the first round, as it happens over the first 2 days for the men's and the women's tours. You can't ask for better than that. And the only thing that we ask is that you join the conversation. And to join the conversation, we'd love it if you could subscribe to this platform with us and give us some feedback and even start a conversation. You only have to be a subscriber for a grand total of 60 seconds, and we really appreciate all the feedback we get from our audience all around the globe, because we're not just local or general, we're global. So before we continue on with Jordan Thompson, let's do a little bit of this. And let's do, why is that blank? Let's have a look at the Sights, Sounds, Summer of tennis at Melbourne Park, and just a little preview for those of you that didn't join us during the qualifying days, as we checked out what was going on during qualifying, as the players tried to win 3 matches in a row to earn them a first round spot at the US Open. But let's just enjoy the Sight, Sound, Summer of tennis at Melbourne Park, and a little preview of some of the type of content we can bring you. On the left hand side of that frame, you'll see the live score from one of the matches we covered last week. But let's just take a break from the profile of Jordan Thompson, and let's just have a look. During this profile, it was reported that there's 8 Australian men playing in round 1 of the US Open this week, which is a fantastic result for Australian tennis. So let's just quickly run through those before we go back to this profile of Jordan Thompson. Now, he's ranked 50 in the world at the moment, 51 if you're looking at his ATP Tour profile, which I threw in the chat there for those of you that are interested. He's playing in the first round. He's playing Botic van der Zandschulp, who is ranked 55. He's from the Netherlands. Jason Kubler, the Australian men's doubles champion of 2023. He's ranked inside the top 100 at 86. He's having a good year. He's no slouch with a tennis racket. And I'll tell you what, after all those injuries that plagued him and prevented him from establishing himself after just absolutely ripping up the junior boys side of things, it's taken him some time to get over his knee injuries. And have a look at this, 86 in the world, and he's playing Matteo Arnaldi, ranked 62, the Italian. And here he is, classy Tanasi Kokkinakis. And speaking of injuries, this guy has gone through the ringer over the last 5 to 6 years, to the point that he nearly gave up. He was seriously considering giving up his professional tennis career, because he just wasn't getting a break. Well, I tell you what, he got a break. His shoulder gave out, his elbow gave out, he was having trouble with his knees, just everything, one after the other. But the mentality of this guy to come back, he won his first Australian Tour title, Adelaide, in 2021, I think it was, or was it 2022? No, he was the defending champion from 2021, and he, although he didn't defend that title too well, you will remember that with box office Nick Kyrgios, Classy Tanasi Kokkinakis became the Australian men's doubles champion with Nick Kyrgios in 2022, and they defeated Max Purcell and Matt Ebden from memory in that final. What an achievement. So there he is, ranked 77th in the world, and he's playing the player Zhu, ranked 237, who's got through qualifying from Chinese Taipei. For those of us who are local to Southeast Asia, that's also known as Taiwan. Alexander Vukic, great effort from him to get to 51 in the world, but he has had a bit of bad luck with his draw. He's up against Alexander Zverev, who's ranked 12, the German. Max Purcell, another Australian, another men's doubles champion. He won Wimbledon this year. Was it this year? Last year with Matt Ebden. And he's up against the other Australian in the top 100, Christopher O'Connell, ranked at 68, who I know is a big favourite. Christopher O'Connell, a favourite of Carolyn B, one of our very dedicated audience members, and great to see Alex de Minaur just struggling to get into that top 10. He really has to come up with the goods over, now basically, to if he's going to make the best of what is a great career already, but just on the cusp of the top 10, ranked 13th, de Minaur. He's up against the player from Kazakhstan coming through the qualifiers, ranked at 128 in the world, is Timofey Skartov. Rinky Hijikata getting through qualifying, ranked 111 in the world. He is, he's pretty handy with a racket as a singles player, as well as the doubles, having won the men's doubles title this year at Melbourne Park with Jason Kubler. But he has got a Russian on his hands, Pavel Kotov, ranked 97 in the world. And the final men's player in the top 100 starting tomorrow, local Melbourne time, is Alexei Popyrin, ranked 40 in the world at the moment, and he's playing Dominic Stricker, who came through qualifying, ranked 127 in the world, and he hails from Switzerland. So we are crossing our fingers and hoping for all the best for these Australian men. And it's great to see players like Alexander Vukic and Alexei Popyrin, getting some traction in their tennis career, because we've followed them through the wildcard as wildcard entrants into Australian Open qualifying over the last couple of years, and of course this year some of them getting direct entry into the first round of the Australian Open as wildcards, or just direct entries. And Max Purcell, it's fantastic to see him getting traction in his singles career. He's always been a very handy doubles player, and he's also a very straight shooter, which is a typical trait for any Australian, not just the men. So that's the review of the Australian men as they go into this year's US Open 2023. So let's take a quick break, and then we'll come back and finish off this profile of the very, very well credentialed, but a lot underrated Australia's Jordan Thompson. So don't go away. We'll be right back after this. We tell stories, and our story is tennis. G'day, welcome back to this Australian Open Live, produced by Wise Words Media, live in Melbourne, Australia. And this morning we've decided to jump into our Spotlight series and a little bit of player watch. It is Jordan Thompson we're profiling this morning, the Australian player who recently celebrated his 100th career win as a tour professional. He's been on the professional circuit since 2016, over the last 10 years, establishing himself. He is a very well-credentialed, high-performing, elite tennis player, and this is why at Australian Open Life we love bringing you details about players such as this, not because he's Australian, come on, he just happens to be Australian. And we like bringing our audience information about these sort of players. So let's get straight back into it by doing a bit of this. So whenever you hear that stinger, we're just switching it up a gear. So let's continue and finish this profile of... oh no, we've got a bit to go yet. So maybe we'll take a second break to finish it off soon. So just continuing on, you might remember that earlier Jordan Thompson, his view of his choice of career as a tennis professional, he is actually competing in, according to him, tennis is the most messed up sport ever. But don't worry, Jordan, it might be a bit messed up, but you're not alone. There's a few other messed up tennis professionals joining you, as we've just seen. But there's an Australian uprising this year, according to this this tennis profile of Jordan Thompson, even without the injured box office Nick Kyrgios, who's not competing in New York. He also withdrew from the French Open, and from memory, I think he might have withdrawn from Wimbledon. Possibly. So, but anyway, Nick Kyrgios, it's not all about you, because Jordan Thompson is going to be one of 8 Australian men starting at the US Open at Flushing Meadow, New York, and there are 8 of them, as we've just profiled them in the last segment. 8 Australian men in the top 100. So for those of you that weren't paying attention, it's Alex de Minaur, Alexei Popyrin, Max Purcell, Alexander Vukic, Chris O'Connell, Classy Tanasi Kokkinakis, an Australian men's doubles champion, Jason Kubler. And I'm sorry, Max Purcell, I should make a point of mentioning that you're a Wimbledon men's doubles champion. Now, another doubles champion, they're everywhere. You cannot walk through a room without tripping over a men's doubles champion from Australia at the moment. Rinky Hijikata won the Jason Kubler, the Australian men's doubles champions, and James Duckworth, he's no slouch either. They are both barely outside the top 100. And box office Nick Kyrgios currently has a protected ranking of 21. Well, there you go. Now, Jordan Thompson was outside the top 50 for about 30 months. He was inside the top 100, but he was outside the top 50 for about 30 months. Now, he finally got it back into the top 50 last week as a reward for qualifying, then making the round of 32 at the tournament in Cincinnati, Ohio. And he pinched a set off the world number 1, Carlos Alcaraz. Nice work, Jordan. And he also won a set off the top 20 star from the UK, Cameron Norrie, who is also extremely quick around the court. That match took place in June. But now remember that Jordan Thompson, he had a great centre court stoush this year with Novak Djokovic, and the Joker. Last year he locked horns with the King of Clay, Rafa, at the French Open. So he's got some chops, Jordan Thompson, and he knew what he was getting into against the Joker this year. Now, Jordan reckons that as a tour professional, it could be a dream or it could be a nightmare playing against Novak Djokovic, and he reckons that he's had more than a few experiences watching a few guys on the tour have nightmares out on court, any court, against Novak Djokovic. And that doesn't surprise me at all. I reckon you would have nightmares even before you step on court, actually. I wouldn't blame anyone for getting a nightmare or two about Novak Djokovic. How would you feel knowing that you had to play against one of the world's greatest ever players? Well, he and his Jordan Thompson and his coach, the zany but highly regarded Rinky Hijikata. Now, I thought I was the only person that used the word zany in conversation. They got straight to it and straight down to the point. That when they were sitting down talking about the strategy there, I'm just going to give you a slightly. Oh no. I'll leave that alone. I was going to change the image there. But the strategy they worked out, that Jordan Thompson, when he sat down with his coach, Rinky Hijikata, they both knew that if he played his normal game, he doesn't mince words. He was going to get killed. So they went through all the stats, and it was pretty clear that to Jordan Thompson that he had to try and change his game drastically to try and win. So his best chance that day against Novak Djokovic on centre court at Wimbledon this year was in tiebreakers, and he reckons he wasn't that far away in getting across the line in 2 tiebreakers. So when the match ended in defeat for Thompson, in many ways, it was one of his finest hours. The 7-time Wimbledon champion Novak Djokovic had to fight to eventually triumph 6-3, 7-6, 7 points to 4 in the tiebreak, and 7-5. Thompson transforming into a serve volleyer for the occasion. So, in retrospective, Jordan Thompson says that losing 3, 6, and 5 in those 3 sets, in that 3-set defeat, he lost to the greatest ever, but he took a lot of confidence from that, especially playing a style that he normally wouldn't play, that is serve volley. A typical Australian will serve volley, but that's not Jordan Thompson's go. He generally likes the hard court. So Djokovic even admitted afterwards that he struggled at times to read the serve of Jordan Thompson, the searing serve, he described it, and it was a nod to the extensive work that Jordan Thompson did when he was a little kid, who was a former professional tennis player, Steve Thompson, and he runs the Mills Park Tennis Centre in Asquith, North West Sydney. And Jordan Thompson saying that it's a unique club located at the end of a cul-de-sac. There's a long driveway, and at the end of the cul-de-sac there's just bush, and you go to the right, there's 10 tennis courts. If you hit a ball over the fence, it's either going to end up with a wallaby, a koala, or a snake, which is a great way to finish this penultimate part of our presentation, and we'll finish off a little bit. Let's just do a little bit of this. And so that stinger means that we're into the home straight for this Spotlight series, the Player Watch on Jordan Thompson, who is our featured profile player for this Australian Open Life this morning in Melbourne, Australia, produced by Wise Words Media. And let's bring it home with a final look playing in the background of the Shotmaker Showcase. Not the Shotmaker Showcase, the Player Watch. Come on, in the Spotlight series, that's what we want. So we'll just flick over the screen here and keep it visually interesting for those of you who are more interested in the visual aspect of these types of presentations. So we'll just get the screen cranked up. And we'll take you through to the top 5 on the WTA Tour in terms of like losing points on a break of serve. That's one of our favourite stats, because stats don't often tell the story when it comes to mentality or form or how hard a player works. But this stat is one of our favourites for trying to read into the mind and the mentality of any professional player. So while that plays in the background, let's finish off this profile of Jordan Thompson, the 29-year-old Australian who has achieved 100 wins as a professional on the tennis circuit over the last 10 years. Now, when he was a kid, he was trained by his dad, a former tennis professional, Steve Thompson, and it was his dad's strategy to help his young son develop what they called a fast arm. So the quicker your arm is going through the service motion, the harder it is to read, the harder it is to counter, the harder it is to play against. And that's starting with trying to hit accurate serves as hard as possible with spin. And sometimes instead of using a racket, you're using a rope. And the story goes, the anecdote, that those early lessons stood him in good stead, because as he became a tennis professional, those early lessons helped pay for plenty of bills for Jordan Thompson in the years that followed. Now, his coach, Matasevich, and Steve Thompson were both in Florida recently as Jordan Thompson went through his final preparations before heading to Flushing Meadows for the US Open this week. Now, you might remember that Jordan Thompson was able to purchase a property to use as a base, as a home for his overseas, as an overseas base. And he reached the final 16 at the US Open in 2020, and that is his career best ever Grand Slam result back in 2020. Now, his form in the second half of this year in 2023 has buoyed his expectations that he can actually go out and do some damage and get into the second week. He says he's played a lot of good matches at the US Open, a lot of five-setters, and I can tell you from personal experience, I've followed those closely. He is a great five-set player. He's got a great engine to rely on to get him around the court over 5 long sets in that heat and in front of the boisterous, raucous New York crowd. So he's just got to put everything together in a slam. And to finish off with, Jordan Thompson says, obviously I had a tough draw at Wimbledon against the Joker and hoping for a better draw at the US Open. He's in the top 50 at the moment and he's trying to get into that top 32, and that'll guarantee a seeding at the slams. That is his next call. So we wish Jordan Thompson all the best as he goes into tomorrow for his first match. As we said, his first match at the US Open tomorrow. He's coming up against a player from the Netherlands who's ranked 55 in the world, Dzangelap, and not a well-known name to us here at this Australian Open Live, but no doubt if this guy's ranked 55, it's going to be the fine margins that separate these two blokes in the elite level of the men's professional ATP Tour at the US Open tomorrow. So that's about it. So let's take a short break and then we'll come back and wrap up this player watch, this dedicated profile to Jordan Thompson, the 29-year-old Australian, ranked 51 in the world at the moment as he goes into the US Open 2023 at Flushing Meadow, New York, starting tomorrow, local Melbourne time. Don't go away. We'll be right back. So there it is. That is the story. We just told the story in our Spotlight series. We delved into the career of Jordan Thompson as part of our Player Watch episode. Jordan Thompson, the 29-year-old Australian from Sydney, who's been kicking around the professional circuit for some 10 years and recently celebrated his 100th career win as a professional on the men's tour. So well done, Jordan. That is pretty unique achievement for any player on the men's or the women's tour. And we'll be watching out tomorrow when we come back for our dedicated live coverage, audio only, radio style coverage from Melbourne, Australia, living vicariously through the browser, imagining ourselves there in New York, chowing down on a New York donut, a New York hot dog, and a local takeaway coffee in the grandstand there, rubbing elbows with all sorts of tennis fans from around the world. So that's tomorrow. We'll be back for live coverage of day one, first round action, and we'll focus on the men tomorrow, and we'll only be bringing you live coverage of one set of any live match as we broadcast tomorrow. And when we finish that live broadcast, we'll come back and just do some a little bit of pickup with the completed matches, see who got through, see what the results were, the upsets, the tantrums, the tears, the injuries, the victories, and the cheers that went for whoever has got through to the second round. And then we'll come back the day after. In 2 days' time, we'll be back with coverage of the women, dedicating coverage to the women for their first round matches at the US Open 2023. Why? Why do we do that? Because that is where the juiciest stories are, the juiciest results, and the most interest, where you see players like Jordan Thompson and others ranked outside the top 100, like Rinky Hijikata, a men's doubles champion of 2023 at the Australian Open, ranked 111 in the world, but he got through qualifying, and it'll be interesting to see players like him around the top 100 or just outside, how they cope with the conditions in New York, the boisterous, raucous crowd. They're in your face, they're in New York, which is just the way we like it, because every Grand Slam has a personality of its own. So that's the coverage we want to bring. And we'll focus on the women on the second day, dedicated coverage to the WTA Tour players there. So there's plenty to look forward to. So in the chat box there, for those of you who are interested, we've just thrown in the link to the US Open tournament schedule, the match play schedule. You can see that the qualifying's already done. So the gates open at 9:30 in the morning. Play starts at 11 o'clock in the morning, local time in New York, and it'll be the men's and the women's singles first round up until late in the afternoon, and then 6 o'clock in the evening, local time. Play will start 7 o'clock local time there in New York. For those of you that are interested, there's also information there about tickets. If you happen to be in New York and you're listening to us from New York, you've been listening to The Bloke Who Walks. That is this Australian Open Life. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching, and we'll chat to you soon.